Good morning, guys. I hope you're enjoying your morning coffee wherever you are. There is news from the fight between reporters and authorities. So the eruption seems to be over. There is no more lava coming out of the eruption site, but the fight between the police chief of Sodorns and the reporters seems to be going into round 2. And the police chief has given an interview, and in that interview he explains why the access to the press during all the events and evacuations and people back in town since November 10th, when we had the first magma intrusion, why he has acted the way he acted. He doesn't say it completely free and openly, but he certainly hints at that. And there was one incident on November 10th, shortly after the town of Grindavik was evacuated, where one reporter, in his opinion, really overstepped the limit of what he was allowed to do. So we'll talk about that, and we will also talk about the heating situation in Sodorns and the southern peninsula, because there will not be heat in the next coming days. The pipes are destroyed by the lava flow, and also the backup pipes are destroyed by the lava flow, and they cannot enter that spot because the lava is still very hot, so they can't repair it at the moment. So this is dire because it's cold, it's winter, so they have just released it's going to be cold days and cold nights. And what people are doing to get heat from hot tubs to gas is a little bit scary in some incidents. So we will also talk about that. And also at the end of the video, I will show you Rudy, what he does. When we were sitting on the couch last night, I was editing my video and he was next to me, supposed to assist me, but then this happened. It's going to be at the end of the video as always. And guys, if you could give this video a like, share it to all the platforms that you have, leave me a comment, and very important, watch it till the end. That would be great if you could support my channel like this. And now let's talk about that reporter that seems to have messed it up for everyone. But is this justified? So Olfa Ludvigsson, the police chief of Sodorns, he has said in an interview that an incident took place shortly after Grindavik was first evacuated, and this has influenced his decisions about media access ever since. So he says it didn't really start well. So what has happened? An employee of RUV, that's a radio television station in Iceland, biggest one as far as I can see. So the media entered Grindavik, and this reporter tried to enter an abandoned home, not abandoned in a way that it's abandoned forever, an evacuated home, I would say. So residents had just left the town and that reporter tried to enter. Is that correct? Of course not, because at that time it wasn't sure when the residents would come back, and the whole magnitude of this event was also not known at this time. There wasn't even an eruption. There was just this earthquake swarm and that magma tunnel that had formed underneath Grindavik. Of course, there was this substantial damage, these spectacular for the media, these open cracks in the roads, the pavement having like height differences, so long cracks through all the town, and heavy damages to homes, of course. But it is understandable that it's tempting for a reporter to go into a home to document probably the cracks in the wall and the damages, because there have been substantial. Did he go in there to steal something? Probably not. Was it a bad decision? Yes, he should have asked for permission, right? But you know, we all make mistakes, and to justify this to not let anybody else in over the time of, like, we're talking about months now. That was in November, so it's almost like 4 months, not completely, but you know what I mean. Is that justified, guys? Let's discuss about this. Leave me a comment. I'm really not so sure about this, because if there's one guy making a mistake, don't blame everyone. And I'm sure the guy has said that he's sorry, and I'm always for, like, gosh, don't make such a big deal out of it. But we have to hear the other side as well, the resident that owns the home and the residents of Grindavik as a whole, because they felt violated. They had to leave their town. They had to leave everything behind. You have to imagine that was a sudden evacuation. The earthquake swarms happened during the night. There was no warning. And then the scientists at the seismic surveillance station, they saw this, and then they said in an interview, oh gosh, this is right underneath Grindavik. We got to get the people out. So they evacuated at night. They didn't take anything with them. They even had to leave some pets behind that they couldn't find so quickly. So imagine yourself, you have to leave your home with everything in there, and then someone sneaks in there and wants to film. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable at all. So I completely understand that, but couldn't they have found a way with rule guidelines, let the press in, but, you know, homes are out of the question, or ask for permission of the owners, or go with the owners? There were certain times when the owners were allowed back into town to get their belongings. So it is a difficult question, but I don't think maybe it was super correct how the press was treated here. So Olfar Ludvigsson says it didn't start well, and things were going extremely badly in Grindavik. And he says then the actions of responders were criticized by people of Grindavik and others for allowing these people in. So it seems to have been a little bit of a fight there. And of course, the reporters are now asking, okay, we get that, but does the rest of us have to soak up, you know, the pain from these actions of just one person? And, you know, the police chief says this was a bad message into society, and that person clearly damaged other media people because of residents of Grindavik's negative experiences. And of course, this has led to various discussions since then. And he says, well, you have to just accept the fact that right now, this is the status. It is like this right now. And this reporter has made a mark at an unfortunate time when no one was in the town, and he should not have done that. And I get it. And then he further says, basically hinting that it's not even necessary to have more press in the town, because in his opinion, he says the event is well documented. Yeah, we have seen pictures of the damaged roads. We have seen pictures of the cracked houses. But, you know, the feeling that I have, only very limited people at a time did have access, and they were the only ones that really profited it from that, because they sold the drone videos and the pictures to other media outlets. So I'm pretty sure that other reporters are probably not happy with that. So I think that's maybe part of the problem as well. So he was asked, do you feel you've done everything you possibly could do for journalists who, of course, would take pride in documenting history in times like this? And then he says it's a kind of, like, we call that wishy-washy. He says, I'm not sure now, but I think that the story is well documented. The rescue team, the Thorbjörn rescue team that was in the town, has taken pictures and has given them to the press. He says if people want to have justice for that situation and what has been going on, he says he does think that the journalists and photographers have done a great job of reporting and photographing the events that have taken place on the Reykjanes Peninsula in the recent years. So what he's basically trying, he's throwing them a little bone. He says, oh yeah, they have done such a great job, but here you're out, basically. And he says they have done this despite the restrictions and access. And then he's comparing it to the avalanche disaster that has hit Iceland very bad. So he says basically, the real damage is basically 3 homes where the lava has gone into their front yards and has damaged like 3 detached houses. One is basically still standing, and many houses in Grindavik are of course useless, total loss, badly damaged, but they are still standing. And he says when the avalanches happened in the western part of Iceland at the time, much more was lost, and some people lost everything, plus the casualties were very high. And then he says in Grindavik we have lost a man in a terrible accident, but otherwise no lives have been lost. And then he mentions the person, he says the passing of Ludvig Pettersson has been a very difficult event for us and for the entire community on the Reykjanes Peninsula, and especially in Sudurns. And of course our thoughts are and have been with the relatives and those who are grieving, other ones that are grieving due to fatal accidents in the district during the last season, and also employees have had a very difficult time. So what he is saying basically is, well, don't make such a fuss of it. It's been worse in other areas. People have died and people have lost everything. Yes, that is true. But it is always like this. If an event happened that affects yourself, of course, there's always something worse going on in the world. That's out of the questions. There have been terrible earthquakes in Turkey with fatalities just recently in Japan, where so much has been destroyed and lives have been lost. Of course, but in my opinion, you always have to see it from the person's perspective. So the residents of Grindavik, although the avalanche was worse, and of course from the outside we can say, well, you're lucky, you can even get your belongings out of the house and it's just a house. But for them, I'm sure many of them are under shock. Imagine yourself, you're sleeping in your bed, and then out of nowhere, you didn't see it coming. You have to be evacuated and leave everything behind. Your home is your castle. That's where you feel safe. It is traumatizing. And for everyone who experienced this at the moment, this is their worst case scenario, the worst thing that has happened probably in their life so far. And I don't think that should be downgraded by saying, well, you're lucky, it's worse somewhere else. Because at the current situation and what the people currently feel and what the people are currently going through, it is terrible for them. So I always say I don't like it when it's compared to something else, because the situation is terrible for them. Do I like what the police chief is saying? You know what? He is in contact with the people of Grindavik and with the council of Grindavik. And if he represents what they are feeling, that they, after this incident, feel violated and don't want any more press like unleashed in the town, then I think this should be respected, because it's their privacy, it is their homes, and although they had to leave, it is still so many things in the homes that are still private. And I'm pretty sure, let's say once everyone has taken everything out, that probably reporters are allowed in the empty homes to document the cracks in the walls and the foundation, to document all the damages. So there is still time to document everything. I don't think there is any time pressure. There's not a big lava stream coming that will cover everything so that they can't really document that. And so But how did the Journalists Association react? So the chairman of that association has said that they want data that confirm the decision making in that matter. So that justify, like letters from residents, complaints filed. They want to see hard evidence as to why the police chief of Sudorns has restricted the access so drastically. And they ask him, will you grant that request? And he just said, I mean, like officials always say, he says, I'm going to look into it. And maybe he has to talk to the residents of Grindavik. And basically what he has been accused of is like censorship and preventing the freedom of expression. But he basically says, when he was accused of that, he says, I think you guys are misunderstanding these concepts. So they are colliding, and we have to see how this turns out, because it's not only a discussion, it's already beyond that. And basically what he said, and I mean, he's stirring the pot with this, I think. He says, when the reporter asked him, so our arguments that we bring forward based on a misunderstanding? And then he says, it's hard to say, but it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, in my opinion. So he is stirring the pot. And the Association of Journalists has sued the government to recognize the right of journalists to carry out their work in Grindavik. So it's maybe a little bit more than a storm in a teacup already. And his reaction is also, again, quite like when he was told, well, there's a lawsuit, right? That's a little more than just a teacup storm. And he says, well, the Association of Journalists is free to do what it wants to. I have said it many times in my communications with the media that I am here for 3,800 residents of Grindavik who have become refugees in their own country. And although there was no written request to keep the media off the residential streets, it was the conversation amongst residents that has led to that conclusions. And then he's asked again by the Reporters Association, so are these decisions based on clear evidence, on clear sources? And he says, well, they are based, among other things, on the provisions of the Public Safety Act, and I fully understand what the media is after, but sometimes there are just certain limits. So we will have to see how this plays out. We still have a dire situation on the peninsula regarding the heat, because there is no hot water, so there is no heat, because everything comes from that power plant, the electricity, the warm water, and of the hot water that heats the home. So what have residents been doing? They have used electric space heaters, although they were asked to use them as minimal as possible. They didn't listen because it's cold, it's winter. So it blew the grid in many areas. They have announced today that they have to prepare for quite a few cold days and cold nights, because the bypass pipes are also broken and they cannot be repaired. So the civil defense is asking the residents of Sudorns to use electricity sparingly, because there could be more power outages in many parts of Sudorns this evening already due to the overload. So this announcement states that the power company said that their electric distribution system is not designed to heat homes and therefore cannot withstand these high loading points. So they repeated and repeated that the residents use electricity to the minimum, and only this will then get them through the next following days. And then residents, have used gas heaters, but that's dangerous inside a home. So they have advised residents to open the window when they use gas heaters. This is kind of like you open the window where it's like minus something outside. But of course, right, it is important also to turn off all gas before people go to sleep and basically put their gas heating system out to the front door. And they're also saying gas should never be used in a closed space indoors and overnight. It's very important to ventilate spaces where gas is being used. But you know, people are freezing. It's really, really cold. And they say everyone only should use like 2.5 kilowatt per apartment in the houses to maximize the use of the electricity. And they also should switch off electric ovens while they're using other energy intensive electronic devices. And then they said they should not charge their electric cars at home. Right? But of course people don't listen. They need their cars and they want to be ready to evacuate. But that's the problem. The use of the electricity is going fast in the neighborhoods. So it's going to be a problem, and we have to see how this turns out in the future. So guys, this was a quick update. There's more updates following today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I've seen your nice comments. Thanks for the supers. Thanks for the coffees that you keep sending me on my coffee site. So thank you so much for that. Now check out my little Rudy, what he did while I was editing my video, and then I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.